Good morning. I am calling to order the Wednesday, November 8th Pikes Peak Area Council of Government Board of Directors meeting. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming an hour early this morning. If you are online, we are going to be going shortly into executive session, and the regular meeting will be beginning at 9 a.m. So I will just set that time right now. So even if we finish early, we'll take a little break. All righty, Andy, let's establish a quorum, please, this morning.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We need 7 and counting 5 in the room and at least 3 online, and would just suggest we go around briefly and do introductions, self-introductions.
Okay. Go ahead,
Andy
Cal.
Gunning, PPACG.
Dave Donaldson, Colorado Springs City Council.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls.
Lynette Crow-Iverson, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Before we go any farther,
Yeah.
I want to say congratulations to Mayor Graham, who I'm sitting next to. So congratulations, re-elected Mayor Graham.
Thank you very much.
Cheryl?
Cheryl Richards, Office Manager for PPACG.
Jared Verner, Public Information Officer at PPACG.
Sherry Hoffman, HR Generalist.
Okay, and then Jared, let's introduce who's online.
We can go first. Commissioner Williams turned her camera on, so we can get start first with her.
Holly Williams, Commissioner, El Paso County.
And following with the camera theme, Mayor LeKind.
Mitch LeKind, Mayor of Monument. Congratulations.
We also have Dr. Duncan from Fountain.
Good morning, everyone. Re-elected council at large.
And Commissioner Elsner.
Dick Elsner, Park County Commissioner, and it is not allowing me to turn on my camera.
Maybe that's okay.
That could, well, no, listen, I just got back from vacation. I took a shower today. I look good.
Let's see, is that everybody online?
Yep, and we have a quorum, yes.
We have a quorum. Okay, and Jared, can we get rid of that echoey? Okay. All righty. Thank you. So we have established that we have a quorum, and congratulations to everybody who was reelected last night. And if things went the way you wanted in your city, congratulations. And we're being joined by Councilmember Yolanda Avila. So welcome. All righty. Okay. The second thing on is for the agenda approval. What would the board like to do with that? Mayor Dixon?
I'll move to approve.
Mayor Graham?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for agenda approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that takes us to item number 3, executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, 4B and FL or I. The board in open session is to determine whether it will hold a closed executive session. The issues to be discussed involve personnel matters related to the annual evaluation of the executive director of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government. I'm going to poll the board members, and upon consent of 2/3 of the members present, we may hold an executive board. And Andy, was there anything you wanted to say about that?
Just that this is where Jared will put non-voting board members in a waiting room, and they can you can wait until 9 o'clock when the regular meeting gets started. And it is going to be just for regular board members that are in person and online. Those that were privy to getting the evaluation form, they're the ones that will be part of the conversation under executive session.
Okay, great, thank you. If consent to the executive session is not given, the item may be discussed in open session or withdrawn from consideration. Okay, so what would board like to do with executive session? Mayor Graham? I'm sorry, Dixon?
I'll move that we go into executive session for the reasons stated in the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for going into executive session. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, so we are now going to go into executive session. All right, good morning. We were in executive session. Do I entertain a vote to come out of executive session? Mayor Dixon.
Also move.
Second, Dave Donaldson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those who voted to go into executive session, please vote. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, thank you. We are now back in our regular meeting session and we are on to item 4. And we have item 4A, staff recognition. Jason O'Brien, 5 years. All right, Andy, you're going to get him over the hump of, is he here?
Come on up, Sherry, and we may.
We can skip it and come back.
We can come back a little bit later. Yes.
Okay, we will
Yes.
come back to that in a few minutes when he gets down here. Okay. All righty, we'll go on to item B, CDOT update of the TPR boundary study. Mr. Stockinger.
Herman is online, I believe. Are you there? Herman wanted to give a brief update on the TPR
Okay.
recommendations, and
Why
we
don't-
can come back to that
Yep,
as well.
we'll come back to item B as well. All
We
righty.
can, I just moved Herman into a speaking role.
Oh, okay,
You should be able to speak now and use your camera and microphone.
great. Thank you. Mr. Stockinger, please go ahead and unmute.
Oh, here. All right, can you hear me and see me okay?
We can hear you.
I'm so sorry that the technology of Microsoft Teams is very different from what I'm what I'm used to. So,
You're not the first person to hear that from.
yeah, the technology will probably take longer to figure out than my brief report. I appreciate you all letting me take just a couple minutes today. CDOT is finishing up our report to the Transportation Commission on our TPR study, and as you know, we were looking to have a couple of recommendations that were related to PPACG and Central Front Range, and we just wanted to report on those. The first potential recommendation was to bring rural El Paso County into the PPACG planning area, taking it out of the Central Front Range TPR. And I'd say we're just so appreciative that you all were willing to convene a special meeting of the PPACG board back on October 16th to talk about those potential recommendations. It was a great chance to hear the pros and cons from your all's perspective. And we had a similar conversation with the Central Front Range TPR the week before that on October 9th. And based on the recommendations or on those conversations, we've decided not to move forward with that as a recommendation for the Transportation Commission. So we're not proposing any boundary changes in either PPACG or the Central Front Range TPR. The other thing we're hoping to accomplish, and we'll still need your help on if you're willing, is the way that TPRs and stack membership is structured. Counties from 2 different TPRs, like El Paso County and Teller County in your area, and Weld County and Larimer County up in the North Front Range and Upper Front Range area, could end up representing a county could end up representing 2 different TPRs on stack. We're hoping that both Central Front Range and PPACG, as well as North Front Range and Upper Front Range, will update your governing documents at some point to ensure that Central Front Range and PPACG aren't represented by the same political jurisdiction at the same time. I don't think that has happened down in this area. And I do think it's a concept that from all the conversations I've had, that people are pretty supportive of making those changes. Excuse me. And should we move forward with that as a recommendation in the report, we'll work with your staff on making those changes if it's something that you all agree with. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Andy, you have any comments about the second part of it?
We think that makes a lot of sense. The recommendation that Herman made about amending our bylaws to make sure we don't have 2 members from the same jurisdiction at the stack representing PPACG and then the Central Front Range TPR. So yeah, we'll put that into process and get that amended, hopefully early 2024. So we'll bring that forward. We'll work up some language, but yeah, appreciate Herman's work and CDOT's work on all of this. It's been a pretty intensive study effort with the TPR evaluations, but yeah, really good work. And I appreciate the recommendation where the team landed.
For the sake of transparency, there's been times in the past where bylaws have kind of come willy-nilly to the group. Would it be possible to have a couple of maybe board members? Somebody's echoey.
We're good now.
Okay, couple board members maybe work on that with you when we do bylaw changes
Sure.
and before we bring them to the board.
Yeah, I like that
So we
idea.
kind of review the whole section it's in rather than just add a
Mhm.
couple sentences here and there.
Sure, good,
So-
good suggestion. Yes.
Okay.
We'll do that. Yes.
Okay, so if you're interested in doing that, please just shoot Andy an email. I've been on the bylaws committee a long time, so I think it's time for somebody else to step up and help with the bylaws. And I know there's a bunch of people. We do have Dick Elsner raising his hand.
Yeah, and let me know if I am the one that's causing the echo. I shouldn't be. The biggest concern I have is I really support the idea. The issue is going to become kind of difficult to do when you have the central. You've got two organizations, and the Central Front Range can choose someone, and PPACG could choose someone. Well, who gets to choose first? That is, if let's say Eric Stone was a representative from PPACG, and we would like Bob Campbell as a representative from the Central Front Range. Both of them live in Teller County. Who gets the first choice of the two? I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues we have working between the two organizations.
Good point. I think you're the echo. I'm getting the heads up from down here. Okay. All right. I've had that happen before where you try desperately to sign in on your computer and it doesn't work and it doesn't work and it doesn't work. So you switch to your phone and then all of a sudden they both work. And then you're trying to get one turned off.
Well, I'm only on my computer, so I don't know what's going on.
All right. Okay. All right. Any other comments or on that? I didn't know if Holly, if you had any comments on that since you're our stack representative on that or just in general. She may be transitioning between places here. She's trying to get here in person.
That would be correct. Commissioner Williams is not on the call right now.
Okay. All right. Andy, is there anything else you need from us for that?
No, I think we're good. No, thank you, Herman. Appreciate the update.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay, we will go back to item A, staff recognition of Jason O'Brien.
Jason's 5-year anniversary with PPACG was on September 4th. Jason is an invaluable member of the PPACG transportation team. His expertise in safety, freight, autonomous vehicles, and alternate modes have been very valuable over the past 5 years. Some of his projects include the lead and subject matter expert for PPACG's traffic safety projects, including annual media campaigns, putting on the Next Big Thing, Transportation Technology and Planning Our Future system, which was a conference in February of 2019, being the PPACG project lead for the Tri-County study that was adopted in 2022. And he is currently working on regional freight study, active transportation plan, and the crash causation study. He's definitely a very valuable member of our team. So thank you, Jason.
Jason, come on down. Well, congratulations.
If anybody would like to say anything about Jason, that would be great.
Jason, it's been great working with you. Appreciate it. I always appreciate people that take complex subjects and make them easy for me to understand. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to serve such a unique region.
Yeah. All right. And we're doing
It's your second stint. You were with us for a while, left for a little bit, but you had the wisdom to come back. Yes. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you again. Congratulations. And now he's gonna change your little Venn diagram a little bit because he's into the 6-year thing now, right? All right. Very good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce. We did have a couple more of elected officials join us that were not at the initial meeting. Welcome, Kelly Case, Woodland Park, for as long as you can be here today. And we do have Amy Mitchell visiting us today, Commissioner from Park County. So thank you, both of you, for coming today. Okay, it takes us on to item C, public comments. Public comments can be made before or during the meeting. Public comments during the meeting are limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely by using the posted Microsoft Link Teams. Do we have anybody in the audience here today for public comments? If so, please come down and state your name.
Madam Chair, this is Hannah Parsons. I apologize. This isn't public comment. I just wanted you to know that I've joined the meeting remotely.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see anybody in the room running down front. Do we have anybody online?
So Madam Chair, I'll ask anyone online who would like to provide a public comment, please use the raise hand function. While they are looking for that, I will just say that we did not receive any advance requests for public comment or any submitted public comment. And I do not see any hands raised at this moment and still don't.
Okay, all righty, we will move on to item D, military installation reports.
So Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anyone online who looks like they would be representing military installation, and I'm not seeing Jeff Bond, which is a difference than usual, but so I'm not seeing anyone representing military installation.
Okay, well, we can come back if they join us later on.
And I think, Madam Chair, we had a conflict. There's the Association of Defense Communities Conference occurring this week. I think everybody's coming back today or tomorrow. So I think that's where most of our normal reps are. So, safe to move on.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, well, no football games to announce or any of that kind of stuff. They don't want to announce that one? Oh, well, Fountain is kind of an army town, so anyway, that's all we'll say, huh? All right. Nope, not going to rub it in. Okay. All righty. Item 5, consent items. These items will be acted upon as a whole unless they are called upon for discussion by a board member or a citizen wishing to address the board. We have items A, B, C, and D on our consent agenda. What would the board like to do?
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent items.
Thank you.
I'll second John Graham.
All right. They wonder why I can't keep them straight. They keep tag teaming over there on everything. So. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda items. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that takes us on to item 6, action items. A, long-range transportation plan, vision, goals, and scoring. Danelle Miller.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for having me here today. So we have been working on developing pieces of our long-range transportation plan. As you all know, we have brought you the financial plan and some other elements. This month we have for you the vision and goals first, and then also the project scoring criteria. The vision and goals we developed with our Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Committee. What we did was took them the vision, and at that time they were called principles from the previous 2045 plan, and looked into whether those things still made sense, whether there were changes that needed to be made. And the Rat Pack really asked for some streamlining. They had some really good suggestions on how to make things a little bit more concise and clear for members of the public. And so we took those, we made some adjustments. The Rat Pack did approve those vision and goals. And then we also took them to the Transportation Advisory Committee and, of course, the Community Advisory Committee before bringing them to you today. Our TAC actually did have a couple of additional changes just to get rid of some redundancy and to make sure that there were no they just wanted to make sure there weren't multiple interpretations of particular goals. So what we're looking for today is a motion and approval of those vision and goals so that we can take those and put them into the LRTP and start building on those to build our LRTP out. On your screen right now, you have our draft vision. I can certainly read it for you if you'd like, but I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it. And then, Jared, if you scroll down, these are our draft goals. And that draft, that number 5 down there is the one that TAC actually asked us to change a little bit because they were concerned about some potential interpretations regarding growth. So we changed that one to say implement responsible transportation solutions.
What was it before?
I would have to bring up the,
Okay, that's okay.
let me see, but
Okay.
it had something to do with mentioning growth out specifically and also environmental and man-made contexts. So we just wanted to simplify it and make it a little bit more clear and concise.
Okay, to implement responsible transportation solutions. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Does anybody at this point have any questions on these goals or these vision, or would you like me to move on to the next portion?
I'm not seeing anyone. Go ahead.
Okay. So the second piece we're asking you to look at today is the scoring criteria. This scoring criteria was actually developed primarily through the congestion management process that the board adopted back in December of 2022. We took that back to the TAC, asked them, does this still make sense to move forward into the LRTP? There were some changes that we made, not so much to the criteria themselves, but to some ways to award points, basically. So these are our scoring criteria, and I wanted to include the amounts, the maximum possible score for each of those criteria so that you can see how those things are weighted. Our safety criteria is primarily looking at crash data at this point, and looking at improving safety. The safety criteria is going to be broken down so that there will be 20 points available for crashes in all kinds of crashes, and then 5 additional points specifically for if the project is in a region or in an area where there was a crash involving a vulnerable user. So specifically a pedestrian or bicyclist, scooter rider, something like that. The maintenance criteria looks at the assessed pavement condition, bridge condition, asset condition. That is, we're trying to make sure that assets that are in really poor condition receive funding prior to items that are in fair or good condition. The operation enhancement criteria looks at a number of different tactics that a jurisdiction could use to make the system more efficient. Whether that be turn lane additions, acceleration lanes, new transit routes, bicycle or pedestrian improvements, traffic signal upgrades. There's a variety of methods that we know our traffic engineers and our traffic planner or transportation planners from those jurisdictions could use to enhance the operation of the traffic system or the transportation system. The environmental criteria looks at what kinds of environmental elements there might be in a project. Again, there's a variety of tactics that could be included in a project application. Could be anything from increasing transit or sidewalks, increasing alternate modes, or it could be something like stormwater infrastructure or vegetation. The mobility criteria looks specifically at congestion and projects that impact known congested areas. And then the connectivity criteria, and this is another one that the TAC felt really important, felt was very important and wanted to weight it a little bit more heavily. It looks at strategic corridors and specifically the gaps in connectivity. And some of those strategic corridors were identified through our congestion management process that again was adopted by the board back in December. But we will also look at individual jurisdictions plans. If an individual jurisdiction has identified a gap or a strategic corridor, that will also be a way for them to be awarded points for this criteria. And then finally, we have one last criteria, and that's a priority project. Each jurisdiction will be allowed to note one project as its main priority, and that project will get a little bit more, a few more points to help bump it up. And Jared, if you want to move on one more slide.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of curious, the numbers that are off to the left are like a points.
Yes.
Okay. Is there some reason why it only equals 90 instead of 100?
You took my question.
That is That is a good question. That's just kind of the point system that we came up with TAC. There's
Usually-
no real reason why it doesn't add up to 100.
Yeah, usually from an engineering perspective, we usually try to have things, if we're scoring and ranking, we usually try to have things equal 100 and then we divvy it up between that. And then second question is, was there a specific rationale for rating connectivity higher than some of these others?
I think connectivity, and I believe Gail Sturdivant is online if she is interested in weighing in at all. But I believe connectivity really speaks to all of the efficiencies, all of the abilities of the transportation system as a whole. It really impacts a lot of different areas in the transportation system. And it does look like Gail has turned her camera on. If you'd like to speak for a moment.
Hi, thank you, Danielle. Gail Sturdivant. I am the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. Just to give you a little more context about the connectivity, when our transportation network it truly is a network where we have multiple connection points. It really facilitates the most efficient operation of our transportation system, both from a dollar standpoint and operationally. So we felt like that had dual benefits within our overall network.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And like Mayor Dixon, I'm just a little interested in the scoring or the points assigned to each thing. To me, like our road system, the two most important things would be making the transportation system work more efficiently. God, that's important. And reducing congestion and supporting movement throughout the region. Those are, to me, if we were to rank these, what are there, 7 things on here in order of importance? Those are the top 2 for me. Combined, they don't equal safety. And in safety, if we're talking about pedestrian hits by vehicles, I can tell you here in the city, especially the deaths, frequently those sometimes, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's significant, turn out to be homeless folks who are either on drugs or have mental issues who cross roads in places they shouldn't and get hit. So I don't know that's a fault of the road system as much as it is we aren't doing a good job with people with those kind of issues. So for me, I would say this doesn't reflect the priority I would set to these 7 various areas. I don't know if we have an opportunity here today to have input into this as the board. If other members would like to do that, I would take at least the minimum I would do is take 10 off of safety and make enhancement and mobility equal. So 15 on operational enhancement mobility, and that would drop safety to 15. They'd all be equal. I'm assuming we've created these values ourselves. It wasn't dictated by the state or the federal.
No, it was created, yes, in-house.
I think, safety obviously is extraordinarily important, but the safest thing would be for everybody to stay home and don't drive your cars. We're not going to do that. And so it needs to be balanced among other things like reducing congestion and supporting movement throughout the region. So perhaps you can talk about that. And then, Madam Chair, I don't know if we want to try to adjust these numbers. Thanks.
I see Gail here with their lights on. I want to make sure we get through all the board members first, Gail, before we come back to you, okay?
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Are there any other board members, either online or in person? I agree with the 90, I think is super confusing. It makes me think of when we were going through the census numbers this year and we changed from percentages to something else, and it was extremely difficult to have to rewrap your brain around one concept. I think 90 is going to be very confusing here whenever everything. So I agree with that comment. And I think it's funny, 3 of us hit on that immediately in the room, that we thought 90 was a little odd. I also think maintenance should be scored higher. I think that's why we're in a lot of the trouble we are in various places, because the roads that we have right now haven't been maintained correctly, and we're having to potentially rebuild things at times when if we had higher priority on maintenance or money for the maintenance, that you might have been able to get a few more years out of those roads. So is this something that has to be passed today, or can we send this back through, or?
So I want to talk through the next slide, just so everybody's clear on
Okay, well, let's let Gail, I think we got through but let's let Gail make her comment. Yeah. Oh, we can't hear you, Gail. You're muted.
Sorry. I do want to make sure that I heard what the two areas that Councilman Donaldson suggested he'd like to see more points on, and then come up with a proposal for your consideration, because I believe, Danielle, that you're going to talk about the significance of having this scoring to move forward with the schedule. So I'm going to be proposing something, but Councilor Donaldson, I believe you said that it was operational enhancements, and then I was unsure if you were talking about connectivity or maintenance having a higher score.
It was mobility.
Mobility.
It was not, yeah, neither of those other two. Connectivity is already scored at 20.
Okay.
I was the one that threw out maintenance, Gail.
Okay, I did hear that one. I've got that one down. Thank you, Chair Thompson. One of the things, and Mayor Dixon brought up a good point, you know, this is really meant to be weighted relatively based on these different criterias, but he is correct. You know, 100 is a lot easier number to use than 90. That I was going to be proposing that we look at the operational enhancement and mobility and adding 5 points to each of those for your consideration. So from this slide, those two would change. Chair Thompson, I heard what you said about maintenance, and I would agree with you. But I think on with the long-range transportation plan, our focus is really more on the future capital needs, not necessarily on the maintenance of the assets we have now. So I felt like leaving that one where it is at 10 might be something that the Transportation Advisory Committee would still come back and recommend. But we would, I think we'd be comfortable suggesting making that change to 15 for the operational enhancements and mobility. One other thing that Councilman Donaldson brought up, I did want to hit the area of safety. You hit the pedestrian strikes. One of the other areas that's covered in safety, it does look at all types of crashes, and the safety has a variable ranking based on either if it was a death or a severe injury, and then it goes from there, and felt like that safety still needs to be our utmost consideration when we go through and do our transportation focus. And then these other things go and support that if they're operating correctly, that we tend to have safer roadways just in general. So we would still, I suspect that the Transportation Advisory Committee would still suggest leaving safety at 25.
Then, Gail, are you suggesting then to make this an even 100 by adding an additional 5 points?
Yes, that would be my,
those two.
Yes, that
And-
would be my recommendation to the board for their consideration.
I wanted to comment, but I want to wait until she's finished with the slide.
Okay, so this slide would now look at 25 points for safety, 10 maintenance, 15 operational enhancement, 10 environment, 15 mobility, 20 connectivity, and 5 prioritizing needs throughout the region. That would be the weighting scale.
Thank you.
Just changing the 2 operational and mobility from 10s to 15s to make it an even 100.
And as far as the timing goes, we do have the ability to take this back to TAC and bring it through. We are, as you all know, on quite a tight schedule to get through our LRTP, but we did kind of push it through TAC a little bit this month so that we could potentially have some dialogue here and bring it back. We would hopefully be able to come to consensus no later than next month so that we can get scoring done late December, early January.
Okay, and you said you had another slide at least?
I do have one more slide, just so everyone is aware. So when we do select projects for the LRTP, it is actually all of the jurisdictions that do the submitting of those projects. We actually have that call for projects open right now. Then once we have the scoring system approved and we have that in place, we will actually do that project scoring, as I said, late December, early January. We want to make sure that everybody knows that the scoring system alone is not going to dictate what gets into the LRTP and what doesn't. We also want to take into account the wealth of engineering expertise that comes through our jurisdictions, and also some jurisdictional equity. So we want to be aware that each individual jurisdiction should have a chance to get projects in our LRTP. It shouldn't just be one jurisdiction with the wealth of projects, et cetera. And our TAC is very good at doing that. From there, we'll have that initial project selection with our Transportation Advisory Committee. From there, we'll have to do quite a bit of project evaluation through our modeling and other analyses to include those projects in our LRTP. And we expect through that kind of draft process and our public review and our committee process that adjustments are going to be made with the jurisdictions prior to any sort of finalization late next year. So I just wanted to include this slide so that we're transparent with our process.
Any further questions or comments from any board members? I'm not seeing hands raised online.
If we're done, I mean, it sounds like maybe we're going to push this to next month so then I can have my talk to folks about this. I still think safety is overweighted here. I mean, safety is 25 and we're saying making the transportation system work more efficiently is 15. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's important, but it is not vastly more important than these other things. The roads have to flow. That's number one. Citizens want to get places. If we devalue that to put safety at 25% of everything, I think it's too much. I'd be curious to see what my colleagues think about that.
Councilmember Williams. I'm sorry, I demoted you. Commissioner Williams?
I'm fine with whatever you tell me.
As
long as I'm awake enough to say hello. I think the issue with safety being at 25, and I do want to bring up the others so that they total 90, but frequently I think the safety, if you talk about I-25, Highway 24, we had an intersection in the county this year. It was Rex Road and Meridian. So what happened was when they closed Hodgen Road which is way north in the county, to completely take out a bridge and replace it, all of a sudden I had to always drive through Rex Road. It happened to be a year I was up for re-election, so I would drive through Rex Road and Meridian to get somewhere. And it was awful, the number of accidents we were having there. And so I think frequently safety indicates where we should, because if we're having a lot of accidents in a specific area, safety is indicating that, wow, that intersection has become unsafe. So we actually we have a impact fee we charge to developers, and our committee actually did not want to spend the money, and the commissioners overruled the committee and said, no, we're going to fix Rex Road and Meridian. We're not going to wait until we have the money. We're going to fix it because it's had too many accidents. So I think that's the importance of safety. Whether it comes down to 20, we can argue that, but I think that safety will indicate on these major roads where we really have an issue. And have a lot of accidents. And that's how we look at it at the county, is if a road is having a lot of accidents, we need to find a way to fix it sooner. So that's why I would think safety probably came out a little higher. But I'm still up to bargain and to come up with a good system.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that connectivity, is a higher priority than safety. Okay, like you were talking about then the Rush Road and that kind of stuff, then I think we should bump that up 5 points and put safety back down to 20. Because I think the two of them are kind of intertwined. But then I think the connection, the flow and all that kind of stuff, then should be bumped up 5 more points. So that's why.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to say I like the proposal of adding 5 points each to the operational enhancements and to mobility. That said, I could certainly entertain a discussion on safety, possibly bringing that down 5 points and reassigning it somewhere else. In a sense, though, I look at it, it's so many of these criteria and they're all interrelated in my mind, or frequently interrelated. What is a connectivity issue may have safety consequences and so forth. So I don't know that going into great detail here without maybe a little more insight is going to be productive. On the other hand, I don't want to hold this up either.
All right, thank you. I noticed John Leosatos is standing over there trying to hold us self back.
Only if Danelle went for the tag out or anybody had any specific questions for me. If you'd like my opinion, I'm happy.
I would like your opinion on how postponing this a month could really because we've had quite a few discussions about we're already kind of behind on this long range transportation plan. We really need to stay on task. And if there's any way today we could solve this issue, I think it would probably give you a little less heartburn for the next month.
Madam Chair, members of the board. Yeah, I mean, obviously in a perfect world, there'd be a moving of the numbers that get us to a 100-point scale and get us to where you all are comfortable. That will obviously make our job easier and allow us to move forward, especially with the holidays coming up. We've already lost some stuff there. That being said, as Danelle had said, we never want to just sort of lay something on your lap and say, oh, by the way, you have to do this now. That if we do that, we're not really doing our job. Unfortunately, other things beyond our control have sort of forced us to do that with some other things, probably down the line. This is not one of them. You can bring it back. That being said, everything is easier. And easier is probably not the right word. Everything will run smoother and will have more slack in the system to adjust to those things that are beyond our control if we can come up with something you're all comfortable with. The last thing I would like to mention is on safety. Obviously, you all know that your numbers within your own jurisdiction better than we do. But I will say as a region, statistically, we are going in the wrong direction for safety. Our numbers continue to climb in the wrong direction. We've done a lot of things within the region to address that. So as a region, safety is a major concern that we would like to address. That being said, if you knock it down from 25 to 20, and you take that 5 points plus the other 10 to make it to 100 scale, and you pick your favorite 3, if there's something you can all live with and vote for today, that would be great. But if not, happy to take it to the TAC. I am, and Gail, if you want to chime in on this, I am uncertain that the TAC, the people who are closest to some of these accidents and things are going to want to voluntarily move safety in a much different direction than 5 points. I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Williams, I see your hand reaching out there.
Oh, go ahead, Yolanda.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. So I think safety is paramount. And in utilities, that's number one, is safety, because with safety, then we affect mobility, we affect efficiency, we affect connectivity. And so I think in all those, safety is paramount. And I don't think it's just homeless, people experience homelessness that get run over or injured or killed. It's we have high school students near the high school, and it's a variety of reasons, and there's areas that just are unsafe. So I think safety is paramount, and we need to stay with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, it appears I'm counting on my fingers, which I might actually be, as I went to put pens in my purse and in my backpack and didn't come with any. So safety, I would say safety 20, maintenance 15, operation enhancement 15, environment 10, mobility 15, connectivity 20, priority 5, and that adds up to 100.
Yes, it does.
Touchdown.
And she did it in public.
And I did it in well, no, I did it on my phone calculator first.
All right.
Sorry.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And I believe it was John that pointed out that this LTRP or LRTP, it's not really focused so much on maintenance as it is on projects. So I agree with what Commissioner Williams suggests. The only difference I would have is take that 5 off of safety. The most important thing is that it's either mobility or operational enhancement. So to get it to 100, each of them goes to 15, take that 5 from safety and add it to the more important one. And I think reducing congestion and supporting movement, that is when you don't have accidents, when people aren't frustrated, they've been at the light a long time and they run through it and T-bone somebody, that causes a lack of safety. So my recommendation or motion, if we're going to take motions right now, would be get it to 100 by adding bringing it up to 15 and 15 on mobility and operation, and then actually add an additional 5 to mobility, because that's what roads are for, to transport us around. So it would become 20.
Okay, just want to clarify this because it does sound like you made a motion. You are moving to take safety to 25?
Nope, safety
I
to
mean,
20.
20 to 20, take 5 off.
Yep.
And take safety to 20 and add it to I wanna make sure.
Operational enhancement would become 15, just like
Operation-
whoever is
yeah,
running the
it's
computer.
15, yeah.
And now mobility is 20. So that would be
No, but
my,
you want to add it to mobility, make mobility 20.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, let
And,
me read.
that is my
Okay,
motion.
let me read through everything for everybody then. Okay, this is the proposal we have on the floor. 20 safety, 10 maintenance, 15 operational enhancement, 10 environment, 20 mobility, 20 connectivity, 5 priority. Do we have a second on that motion?
I would second that. Oh, good. The mayor beat me.
All right, we got 3 or 4 seconds on the floor. Okay, do we have any deliberation on the motion on the floor?
I do think that by increasing mobility and increasing connectivity, the result is safety. And so I think that making those 3 equal, maintenance, I think, as we have a partner organization, for many of us within the PPACG MPO, you've got the Pikes Peak RTA.
I had to bring it up. Didn't
I'm sorry, but
Bring
I should have led the committee to help you win down there, Sharon. I apologize. I just couldn't spend any money like I did for Calhan because Calhan was less than $300. You were less
Let's
than.
move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, we'll move on from PERDA.
Let's move on.
I think that I think that we're gonna get there on that because I think connectivity and mobility complements safety. I'm thinking Woodman Road to Falcon and the Briargate Parkway to Falcon is what I think of when I think of roads and safety because we have a lot of accidents out there. So, and I also think about I-25, heavens. And I think the more mobile you get that, and the more connectivity you get that, then you get back to safety too. So I think all 3 of them are equal. Thank you.
Well, I think if I remember right, and correct me, CDOT, if I'm wrong on this, but a few years ago, it was like for every accident you have, within so many minutes, you have a secondary accident that, off of the first one and then,
It's one of the issues. Yeah. I mean, once you have an accident, that secondary rear ends, except are an issue. I don't remember the timing behind that. Yes.
yeah, it was like 30 minutes or something. It was not 20 minutes or something. It was not a huge amount of time. I just think of down south of Crownton, one of the really great projects CDOT has done is this, what do you call it, Shane? Where you put the dividers down the middle of the road?
Oh, the cable rail.
The cable rail. And you know, that has just really helped tremendously from the crossover accidents we had down there, because for some reason people get out of Fountain and they floor it to about 100 miles an hour, a minimum. And if they're on those silly motorcycles, probably even a heck of a lot faster, because you don't even hear them coming and you can't even see them anymore. And so I think that is a big public safety enhancement that has worked in hand with keeping people, you know, moving faster, because you're not shutting down both sides of the freeway regularly. So we have a motion on the floor. Second, is there any further deliberation on the motion? I didn't know if Ms. Sturdivant wanted to weigh in again. I'm not seeing.
Yeah, I'm available, Chair Thompson. We'd be more than happy to make these adjustments. I think that they're reasonable, and I think we've had a lot of really good discussion about all these different components on the transportation system, how they work together. So I would be, if this is going to be the board's recommendation, we will go back to the TAC and we will work on the supplemental scoring to support these initiatives as directed by the board.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further deliberation? Last chance, everybody. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries for the scoring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we got that done today. Thank you, everybody, for taking a little bit of extra time and working on that. All right, John, a little less heartburn for you. All right, item B, budget adoption. Ms. McBroom.
Good morning, Carol McBroom, PPACG Finance Director. I'm glad we've got this high level math going on. So let's talk budget. In your package today, you received the memo, you received the expenditure explanation, revenue explanation, and then you received 4 draft budgets. In addition, we sent out the presentation from the board workshop, some slides that we'll talk about briefly. But just wanted to go over a couple of, or a few of the highlights. Revenues increased 540,000 over fiscal year 2023. We are proposing a member dues increase of 5%. Full-time employees will be increased to 41, up from 39. They both are in the transportation system, in the program, and they both are grant funded. Just wanted to make it clear that the air quality and the SEDS expenses are fully funded by member dues. And again, I included 4 wage package increases in the draft budget. And so today we're looking for some discussion and then hopefully an approval if you're ready to proceed. So I'll go over briefly go over the slides that I brought to the board workshop on Friday. And the first one is the member dues analysis. Thank you. So what I did here is I looked, compared the member dues increases year over year against the inflation rate, the CPA Denver inflation rate for our region. And you will see that the inflation rate for the region is 36.5% year over year from 2012 to 2023. And member dues increases only went up 26.71%. We understand that the majority of the members want to see smaller incremental increases. So our goal going forward would be to look at needs and only increase maybe based on the CPI for the year, because we understand that the smaller incrementals increase is what you're looking for.
If I remember correctly, I think what I've heard from most people is they would just rather have a base number every year to plan off of.
Okay.
Whatever we land on, 2%, 3%, isn't that?
Yeah, good suggestion, Madam Chair. And Carol and I have talked about this, and probably would make sense to tie it to CPI, but we can dig into this a little bit further with the city town managers and find out what might make sense instead of kind of randomly coming up with 2% or 3%. So more to come on that later. That's definitely the plan going forward.
Right, but if the city, if we could have because our budget starts so much earlier than this does, and I think people are saying that if you just say we're going to tie it off CPI, and CPI this year is, you know, if we all can agree on what it is, we have so many different numbers thrown out on that even. But I think it would help our budgetary processes earlier in the year.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that still whatever? I'm seeing a couple of heads.
I just would have a comment on that. Rather than even considering CPI, I would just prefer to see something because the CPI right now is so high. Let's hope at some point it comes down, but I would just rather see you say like, okay, we're going to increase 2% every year. We're going to increase 3% every year. Something just very basic. And then when we get to this point, we can say, oh, the CPI was 10% this year. Maybe we better go ahead and look at a different thing. But just something so we could say, we're going to give you a 3% increase every year so it keeps our budget stable. I don't know. Does that help anyone? And talk to the
And we could say
managers about that.
Minimum 3%.
Yeah, talk to the managers and your people about that.
Mayor Dixon.
Yeah, I'd be curious on if you do have say a step input, you're doing 2 or 3% a year, and then all of a sudden, like say you get a 10% and you get a step input up, and then is that what we're trying to avoid? Is that step input?
Yeah.
But I would also look at needs. I don't think it's our desire to sit here and just increase dues based on unnecessary reasons. And so that's why I kind of wanted to make sure I said based on needs and if we could kind of compare it to what the CPI is. So I don't want you to think that we just willy-nilly want to increase dues. But to take a fixed rate, we could look at that too.
I think that makes sense, having a floor of maybe it's 2.5% or 3% or something like that, but then revisit it as we start the budget process, say in September each year, and see what is happening as far as CPI and do an adjustment if we had to do an adjustment there. But we're also, as we talked about Friday, we're looking at a lot of other options, also like in-kind contributions to offset the impact on our local match and other ways to match grants, not just relying on cash dues.
Yeah, because most of us are starting budgeting in June and July. So and I think that was a concern in the past is by the time we get it in September, October, we're kind of set sometimes. So, yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, Commissioner Elsner has his hand raised.
Well, thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm going to add to the echo chamber, I guess. Personally, I like tying it to CPI. Throughout the year, you can get a good feel of where it's going to end up. So from a budgeting standpoint, you get an idea. And I say that because if you haven't debruced, that is what we end up going by is CPI. So, you should always be checking and looking to see where CPI is going. And to me, that is a good number to start with. At a county level, it's less than what we need, but I think at your level, it's probably closer to what you would need. And that's a number that we can always budget in easily when we look at it, because we look at it and say, well, our income is going to increase by 4%. Well, then we can increase your dues by 4% in our preliminary budget. So I like the CPI tying it to that.
Sounds like some more research.
It sounds good. Thank you.
But what we do need today, though, is to approve the 2024 recommended 5%.
That's ideal. Yes, we could, and Carol will kick me, but it could slide to December. But ideally, if we can get it wrapped up this month, that helps in a lot of ways.
Okay. All right. Oh, yes.
Well, are we going to do this piecemeal? Because I'm okay moving to approve a 5% dues increase.
Which way would you like it done, Andy? Just a whole document, or I think the whole thing would be easier personally.
Maybe the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we can disentangle if we had to different elements. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next slide, it's a lot of information on the next slide. I wanted to give you breakdowns on how we allocated dues to programs, but what I'd like to focus on is the bottom table. At the bottom, you will see that by year, I listed the percentage based on dues to revenues. And so that's basically what the revenue piece is to our budget. And in 2019, dues represented 6.5% of the budget. And the proposed 2024, it represents 4.19% of the budget. But we also wanted you to understand the jurisdiction value of your dues to our program. And so we indexed it for 2019. And in that year, you're basically returning 15 to 1%, based on every dollar the dues, you're getting 15 index points back. And then I looked at it at equal revenues. So I looked at everything that we had in 2019. I compared it to the revenues that we had in 2024, and that index goes up to 19.1. So we just wanted to kind of bring to your attention that your dues does have value. We are going out and we're getting more grant funding for the whole program. And if there's not, oh, and one more thing that Andy already mentioned, we are looking into other ways to provide the required match, which would be your dues, but we are also increasing our in-kind, and we're looking at provider match. We're using that as well. So we're doing our part to really use all the funding that we have wisely. And if there's not any questions, I'll move on.
We always say volunteer hours, right? And we just kind of throw it out there, but we don't really discuss what you guys could, what people in the community could do in terms of volunteers hours. I know in committees, right, and boards, that counts as volunteer hours as long as they come in person. Now, there was some stress during COVID that if people were attending virtually, we weren't getting the volunteer hours because they weren't driving the miles, which is kind of ironic considering we're trying to get people to reduce their trips. Is that still the standard there?
I'm looking to Carol and Jody. Come on up, Jody, especially because that's where we've gotten most of the in-kind match is through the AAA programs. Yep.
So we aren't allowed to use like board meetings as in-kind, but I'll let Jody talk about his program and where he's getting his in-kind.
Well, I think it was more committees.
It was committees,
It was
right.
committees, yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, to qualify or to really clarify that, we can, through the AAA and Older Americans Act and Older Coloradans Act, we can use in kind from a variety of sources. In particular, to your point around volunteers, for committee meetings, any meetings that we are operating here where we have volunteers come in to participate in those meetings. If we are hosting community meetings and we are part of that, we can use both their attendance and their mileage if they drove versus teams. We can use all of that, and there's a table that we use to calculate the actual value of that volunteer. It's not it's really encompassing if we had to hire someone in that position. And so there's actually a federal table that we use and we track that. And then, like I said, miles based on the federal mileage reimbursement rate, and our volunteers here who answer our phones day in and day out to help support our programs. We have right now we're in the midst of Medicare open enrollment, and so all your late night advertising there, you see that. But we have our team managing Medicare open enrollment, and we have volunteers that participate in that and take. We have a volunteer out of Florida who used to be a former employee, and she still volunteers with us during Medicare open enrollment. We have someone who comes in and we have set up the small conference room here downstairs like an office so he can make his appointments. And we get to calculate all of those hours towards that. Some of our other grants don't allow that level of in-kind management. And so the AAA programs really feed some of that in-kind back into and offset some of the other grants that aren't allowed to do that. And just as an aside, we're actually looking to expand our volunteer program outward facing because we get a lot of calls from the community. And so from the Area Agency on Aging side, if someone calls us and says, hey, I need my leaves raked, we'll be able to connect them with a volunteer and again, be able to track those hours and use those back into our program. So everything is offset and adds to the program and ultimately lowers the cost, much to Carol's fantastic math skills. We give you, you give us $1 and we turn it into 15 or 19 as the case might be. And so we're very proud of that.
Okay, so you need people to answer the phones right now.
We'd love to train you how to answer the phones and come in and work with us. Absolutely.
How about this list of commissions and committees that we have, Andy, that we get every month? Does that count towards volunteer hours?
Not necessarily. It's
Okay.
by program and by approvals through the AAA. We've gotten approval to use certain rates for certain committees there, but for transportation, we need approval from the state and the feds, and they've not
Okay.
granted that
All
so
right.
far, but we're going to keep.
Okay, so if you want to volunteer and help us out,
So
contact
the,
Jerry.
the three that speak into much of the AAA, we can garner that 100%. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. I didn't mean to take a little rabbit trail there, but we always just kind of throw out volunteers and then we don't really.
The bigger the committee, the more hours. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right. So the last item in your presentation we need to discuss is.
So the next sheet, let's talk about the wage package increase. So I gave you a 3.2, which is in line with the Social Security cost of living increase. I gave you a 4.0 to throw in there. I gave you a 4.5, which is in line with the El Paso County published increase. And I gave you the 5.0 salary pool increase, which is in alignment with the Denver region CPI, which is currently 5.4. And then I break it down as to what the personnel costs are. And then before I leave this, there was a question at the board workshop. And the question was, what was the net result of last year's wage increase? And so the wage increase that was approved by the board was 8%. And the majority of our employees did receive an 8%, but really the net of the wage increase was 7.5. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just briefly, you kind of mentioned it already, before Jason's 5-year increase, 65% of our staff have been here less than 5 years. We would like to increase that number, and we know that we have to stay competitive to do that, which is why we are looking for a nice wage package increase. And that's all I have for my presentation. Open for questions.
Andy, I believe.
I just said nice. You get to decide.
Yeah. Andy, I believe you said you were comfortable with anything up to 5. Is that correct?
That's right. We can absorb 5%. We ran the numbers and we can cover that with the grants that we have, state and federal grants. Beyond that, I wouldn't suggest that, but we could absorb it within the projected 2024 grants.
Okay, any questions on Carol's presentation? So we really have 2 things that were suggested in here. We need to decide on the wage increase. And then the other one, shoot, I lost it, Holly. The 5% match. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. So what would the board like to do with this?
Madam Chair, I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if he contacted you also, but Mayor LaKine said he had to drop off the call, so he's no longer with us.
Thank you. He may have, but I'm trying to run a meeting and I don't do very good trying to run a meeting and read text. So thank you. All righty. Well, we still have a quorum. So what would the board like to do with this item? Item B, budget adoption.
Well, I want to know the wage increase at the 5%. Is that base and merit, or is it all merit, or what is it?
It is all merit.
We historically haven't done a cost of living adjustment, so it's all tied to the annual evaluation process that we have.
So that someone that comes in starts, that's, I'm thinking about, being competitive, and so somebody that comes in new would start at the salary that was set how long ago?
Well, that we've approved in the budget, and I need some help maybe describing what that number would look like.
So actually, they would not be eligible to receive the increase that would be approved until their 6th month. They have to be on staff for 6 months, and then they get their increase.
No, but that's not my question. Let's just say hypothetically, somebody came in at $20 an hour, 8 years ago. And since we've never done base or cost of living raises, 8 years ago, and so they come in again, let's say if there's a vacancy at $20, and we could be way behind the curve and not have that competitiveness. So Is
Well-
that a true statement? So they would still come in at $20 8 years later?
Well, no, if they've stayed with us and they've done a good job each year, they've been eligible for the salary pool increase that was approved by the board. Say
Oh, I get
5%
that.
each year.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about the people that, that if they don't stay with us, we have
Okay.
65%, right?
Mhm.
Or less in 5 years. If they don't stay with us and people are coming in at 65%, my question is it $20 an hour like it was 8 years ago? And it'll be $20 an hour now? That's my question.
No, okay, they don't
that
necessarily
base-
start at the
yeah.
minimum, and we do about every 3 years, we'll do a salary and classification assessment to make sure we're competitive with the market that we compete against, here within the region and across the state and with other COGs and MPOs. So they don't necessarily start at, at a negative level or an older 8-year-old base level. It's been adjusted within our budget and within our reclassifications that we do every couple of years. Anything, Carol, that you wanted to?
How much can you reclassify something that's pretty specific?
Well, if inflation's going up and that affects competition within that job sector, then that would have been increased as well, the minimum and the midpoint and the maximum for that pay range. So they could have started at higher rates, since CPI, like we said, was running at 5.4%. So if we did a classification survey this year, that would have increased by about 5% or so. So they're starting at a better, more competitive, economically competitive place, assuming we're updating our salary ranges on a regular basis, which we do. Not sure if that helps or not, but
I guess I'm just a little confused, but so you change the salary.
we adjust the classifications and the
adjust it.
salary ranges, the pay ranges, yes, to stay competitive.
I guess I just don't understand how you can change the classification. I mean, if it ends up doing the same thing where people are, we're competitive and people are staying, that we're attracting great people. So I guess maybe there's a nuance there. So that I need
Maybe
to
somebody
figure
can
it out.
explain it better than I can.
I guess if there was a discrepancy in the past, in 2021 through 2022, we paid employers counsel to come in and help us with our wage range for each classification. And so if there was a classification that was under, they felt like it was under market value, we did have to make adjustments to that. And then we did have employees receive increases based on that report that they gave us. And so we felt like going into 2022, we were even keeled with the market, even keeled with the jurisdictions as well. And so from last year, employees got the 8% increase. And so again, everybody is up to market range.
So that base salary, Yolanda, if during the salary study, they said $20 was way out of line, it should be $28. That person would have gotten it adjusted to that $28 an hour range already. Is that what you're saying? And then they would be moved up to that base range already. And I think we've seen some of our departments over the years do that with our police officers, our linemen, and various things that we're having trouble keeping. We do the salary studies, and then that one particular department might get, or unit might get a change in their base salary, which was an increase for everybody. And then they're still eligible for the merit-based raises. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and we do that in the city too,
Yeah,
right? We've
right.
done that with our own city staff, but I'm just trying to understand it, and that's why I didn't get my degree in finance. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, it's okay. It's very complicated. And then every city has a different way of doing it, right? So, okay. So, all right, do we have a motion for what the board would like to do with this? And in your motion, you need to include your recommendation for the salary increase that you're looking at.
Madam Chair, John Graham. I would move that we approve the budget with the with two points that I'd like to be specific on, that the member dues be increased by 5% as recommended, and that we would adopt the 4.5% total wage package as presented. It'd be the 4.5.
I'll
Okay,
second that motion.
Okay, we
Mayor
have a
Dixon.
motion and a second for the 5% dues increase and the 4.5% wage package increase. Do we have any deliberation on that? Anybody online?
I will just
Councilman-
say I'm comfortable
Commissioner
with
Williams?
that.
You're comfortable with that? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. All right, seeing none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, we're on to item C, formation of a nominating committee for the board executive committee positions. Mr. Gunning.
Okay, Madam Chair, this is the time of year where we did a survey recently to find out who's interested in staying on the executive committee or being on the executive committee for 2024. But also the main action for today was to find a couple of volunteers that A, don't want to be on the executive committee in 2024, but B, would be on the nominating committee to make a recommendation, make a recommended slate that would come back to the board in December. So basically looking for 2 or 3 volunteers, or it could be more than that, that are interested in coming back to recommend who should be the chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, et cetera.
Okay, those are regular board members, okay?
Right.
And so if you're not running for something and you'd like to be on that nominating committee, please contact Andy. I would like to kind of address something at this point that I'm going to take the floor for just a little bit of personal time if the board would indulge me. I've been on this board for a number of years, and I had a discussion with Andy earlier this year on, it seems like we have, in the entire time I've been on this board, kind of been on the routine that the executive board members pretty much stay on 2 years. And then they move up to another position and they're on for 2 years, and another position they're on for 2 years. I think sometimes that kind of limits us on some of our newer board members getting on. And while our bylaws don't address this directly, I asked Andy if there was any positions that he really felt he needed for continuity for his position to keep on for a 2-year cycle. And maybe some of the other ones could maybe consider, getting on and get some experience, but maybe rotating through some of our municipalities, especially some of our smaller municipalities that may not have as long terms. And so Andy came back and said and this is not in our bylaws. I'm just throwing this out there for people to think of as consideration. That he felt comfortable that if to help him, it would be helpful if the chair was in for 2 years and the treasurer was in for 2 years. And I understand, I've been on the treasurer position. Yolanda has too. I think it probably takes a good 6 months to really understand that position and how the money is spent within PPACG. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there for consideration with people, and so that we can maybe get a little bit more movement on this. I was going to be willing to not run for a second year, but Andy asked me to please, as the chair, consider running for the second year for continuity. Yolanda, thank you. Anyways, so just consider that when you're thinking of what you want to do and what you want to run for. So
Well said, Madam Chair. And I should have mentioned too that the board does have 3 principles that were adopted as part of the policy for selecting board officers. Let me just summarize this real quick. One is that consider board members that have had significant experience with the organization. Second is consider the membership of officers to consist of a mixture of individuals from the small jurisdictions and from large and small jurisdictions, so that all perspectives are ensured. And then third, it does have a recommendation that the city of Colorado Springs and El Paso County should have at least 1 representative on the executive committee, since they're the 2 largest local government organizations that contribute over 90% of the member dues to the organization. But those are the 3 basic principles that the nominating committee will consider when they look at a slate.
okay, and we do have a hand raised, Mr. Elsner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To add to what you're saying, the biggest issue is having experience and understanding what PPACG does. So, my feeling is that you can't run for the position until you've been on the board at least a year, so you have a much better understanding. The other thing is, I think the vice chair position, first vice chair, is also important to have continuity. And that's one of the reasons I'm not running this year for first vice chair is I would like to have someone think about running for that position with the idea that, okay, after next year, you can't be chair because you can only have the 2 terms.
Right.
Then you've got someone that at least is a little more familiar with how the meetings are run, and may have had to run a meeting or 2 because of your absence or something like that. So I would like everybody to also consider that the first vice chair position is one that if you run for it, when the chair has to step down, that would be, to me, a logical one to move into the chair position because they've got a better understanding of the players and everybody involved.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, Madam Chair, for clarification, we're looking at, that you were talking about your position, the first vice chair and the treasurer, 2-year terms?
That's what Andy was recommending would make it easier for him to, as chief officer of running the meeting,
Okay, thank you.
the company, I mean. All right. Okay, so you need, if somebody's interested in being on the executive board, you need them to email you.
To email me, but more importantly, in the short term, I need 2 or 3 volunteers that don't want to be on the executive committee, but would be on the nominating committee to
Okay.
identify.
So is there anybody today that would like to speak up to be on the nominating committee? Okay, Mayor Dixon. Mayor Pro Tem. Did I see your hand, maybe? Oh.
Still.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
Okay.
Dick, mute yourself, please.
please.
No, I was volunteering.
Oh,
You asked for
okay, all
volunteers.
right,
I'm
okay,
trying to
all right. Oh, okay,
volunteer.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Really weird. Okay, so you have your 3 volunteers. Roland.
We want to establish maybe a little military type thing, like, we're going to volunteer you for another term, sorry.
Oh, I'm being voluntold. Thank you.
And I would state, since it is an action item, Andy, do you want us to have that as a motion?
That would be super, just to make.
I move that Dick Elsner and Mayor Todd Dixon and Mayor Roland Gardine be our nominating committee for the 2024 officers.
I second it, but I'm going to make one correction to Mayor Pro Tem. We can't quite have mayor yet. Yeah.
Ah, I keep trying to promote you, Roland. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Mayor Pro Tem.
we have a motion and a second with a correction of a title. Is there any further deliberation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, easy enough. Thank you. Alrighty, that takes us on to informational items. Front Range Passenger Rail, Mr. Liazados, and we have 3 things to get through pretty quickly. I don't think we're hearing you too well. If you could move that up a little bit.
Hello.
There you go.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to briefly introduce this item, the Front Range Passenger Rail, Andy Karzin is here to give us a briefing, but I did want to mention that this region has 2 representatives on the Front Range Passenger Rail district. Mayor Graham is one that is appointed by PPACG, and Jill Gabler is the one appointed by the City of Colorado Springs, and they are both here. So with that, Andy, we'll take it away. And remember how much time I told you? A little less than that now.
You can unmute yourself, please.
Very good. I got it now. Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
That's wonderful. I understand that you all are very close on time. I just want to mention a few high-level things. First off, I want to thank both of my board members, Jill Gabler, who is our vice chair for the board of directors for Front Range Passenger Rail District, is there and can make some comments, as well as John Graham. Mayor Graham is there, and he is also on our board. Uh, Very briefly for you all, I do have some slide decks. If you want one, I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to give the group here a high-level conversation of where we were, where we are, and where we're planning on going, and then open it up for any quick questions that you may have. Where we have been is we are in the middle of a service development plan, which is a federal planning process that is required by the Federal Rail Administration. We're about halfway there. We are about ready to get into some good substantive policy discussions around ridership modeling, operation and maintenance, route analysis. As a matter of fact, today our planning committee identified the different routes and discussed the routes that the Front Range Passenger Rail can take in the future. We are also in the middle of a procurement process to develop a consultant bench for the district in order to get some financial modeling and communication and coalition building support for the district. Where we are currently as today, we are planning on going to the ballot in 2024. We are going to be working with the governor and with local governments and with CDOT and FRA and a whole host of partners up and down the corridor in order to try and get to the ballot in 24. We know that that is a heavy push. We know that there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to be successful at the ballot in 24. And we are looking forward to more conversations with you all when we have some more time. I just want to say in that vein, if any of you want to reach out to any of us, Jill, John, myself, for additional information and follow-up conversations from today, we look forward to that and welcome that. We are happy to present and happy to answer any questions that your communities may have in regards to this endeavor. And then where we are going, our hope is, as we said, the ballot measure. We also know that there's going to be a robust legislative conversation upcoming this legislative beginning in January. So we are preparing for that. We have a board retreat. Our annual board retreat is coming up at the end of this month that we are looking forward. That's going to set some policy direction for the district. And with that, I think the general consensus is our service development plan will be done at the end of next year. We are looking at maximizing and leveraging as much possible federal dollars as we can moving into the next year as well. The district is going to be eligible, is eligible, and has applied to be part of what is called the Corridor Identification Development Program, which very briefly is a new special program, specific program developed by the FRA as part of the federal IIJA in order to maximize new and expanding passenger rail opportunities around the country. Front Range Passenger Rail is positioned very well to be accepted into this, as well as positioned ahead of most of the emerging corridors that are competing for these federal dollars around the country. And with that, Madam Chair, I would be happy to stop there and open it up to Jill Gabler or John Graham for any other comments they would like to make. Thank you.
Mayor Graham?
Actually, I think I would defer to Jill. Jill has more historical perspective on this, and she is she serves as the vice chair for this committee, so she has a fairly expansive view of the whole program.
All right, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board, and congratulations, Mayor Graham. Andy really stated everything that's going on. I think for this board, it's really crucial to understand that the reason we're really pushing on the ballot measure in November is because there is so much extraordinary funding coming from the IIJA grants and the federal funding that gives us an opportunity to really take advantage of that, which really reduces the cost to our citizens for passenger rail. So there is a push. The legislature and the governor are all pushing, so we are working on that. And our region is really, really crucial to getting this done. So if you have questions, concerns, ideas, thoughts, please let us know, because we will be coming to you as part of the stakeholder process to really understand and get your thoughts on what this passenger rail system should look like in our region. We know there will be a station in Colorado Springs, likely in downtown. And with that, we will just spread out from there. But we are crucial to this program, and we hope that you can support it and get behind it.
There was a article recently in the Gazette where the governor went down to Pueblo.
Right.
And he kind of talked about maybe not doing as many routes at the beginning. But again, no number. My concern continues to be the amount of traffic, and with all the GHG rules and everything coming down, the freight trains that are going through this community are incredibly long anymore. I counted at least 40 Amazon containers on a freight the other day, and it was like less than a quarter of the train. They were just easy because they're painted different, so they were easy to count. And the amount of time we're sitting there, and then adding that number of front range passenger rail trains. I have a middle school west of the tracks. I have elementary schools between tracks. I have a high school east of the tracks. The traffic isn't going to stop trying to get over the tracks. It's just a big concern, and I just feel like we're not being listened to still.
Well, Mayor, I think Fountain is being heard. With that, you guys had a conversation about safety earlier. Trains are far more safe than anything driving on the road. So there is that as in the forefront. But we will be on the freight line to begin with, because we are trying to get the train going as soon as possible. And that efficiency creates that potential. And of course, it keeps it cheaper, right? I do think that there is a lot of opportunity about modifying the route in Fountain, putting it over the road. I mean, there's a lot of conversations, and I think that is where you guys need to be at the table. One of your planning commissioners reached out to me and wants us to come talk to that group, and hopefully we can talk to your council and work together to try to find the best and safest way through Fountain for the trains. We don't know about frequency yet. We don't. That will come out of the service development plan that Andy mentioned. But I would assume that the train will come by, a few times a day in each direction, and then it will grow from there based on demand. And as our freeway, as we know, gets more and more congested over the years, the demand for an alternative way to move through our front range will be more utilized and more needed.
Because having come from California and living a half a block from the Metrolink, and seeing it not be used, and you're having all this congestion.
California is a terrible example, but yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
We will never be California. I'm just saying that now.
We obviously moved away for a reason, right? But I'm just using that as an example of the trains went by for years empty. I know Lajinas Gonzalez rode one of them because, he's talked about it frequently. We used to laugh that he was probably going past my house and my kids were waving at him and we didn't even know him. But I think there's some serious concerns, and I think the overpass idea, throwing it out, sounds really nice, but there isn't any place to put it.
We'll figure it out, Mayor.
And we are not paying for it.
Any other questions?
Anyways, so thank you, Commissioner Williams.
So I see that Gail Sturdivant has a question, but
thank you.
Andy, could you please, the slide deck is not in our notes. Could you please send that to Andy Gunning so that we could have it go out to the whole board? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My apologies. I didn't send it in earlier.
No worries.
Absolutely. I'll send it to you right now.
Ms. Sturdivant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question related to, I know you mentioned a station in Colorado Springs. My understand, though, with the service model, at least the cost estimates associated with it and what's going to be considered on the ballot, does not include the cost of a station in Colorado Springs. We were told that by the district staff last week, and I think it's important for our elected officials here in PPACG to understand that would be a separate item.
I'll add to that. That will be a separate item that is funded by the communities. However, as I mentioned, with the huge amount of funding coming from the federal government, that's another reason to push on this, because that funding can also help us with building the station and the collaborations we have with CDOT, and we have a great relationship with CDOT right now. So that would help with that. Also, the law that came out of that created the district also created a station location business improvement district. So anywhere you set a station in Colorado Springs, 2 miles around that, we can create a business improvement district that can help to fund and maintain the station. So there will always be ongoing funding coming from that.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Jill. Appreciate it.
Sure, Gail. Good to see you.
Commissioner Williams.
So I think the big push on this, I wanted to explain it a little bit, is there is a district in the mountains already. I don't know what it's called. Do you, Jill?
What is that? I mean, it's the one to Steamboat. What do you, is there a name for that, Andy?
That is not a district. It's a brand new
Yeah, it's not a
idea that was
district, right.
developed.
Yeah, it's a rail line that's under consideration, and they have, I believe, just gotten funding for their own service development plan.
Okay, I thought they were slightly ahead of us. So
Not at all.
I think that the big deal here and why the big push is the IIJA, and there is a huge pot of money available for the state of Colorado to apply for grant funding for these. And I think that's why the big push is coming, because our time expiration on that money is Andy, do you know when the time expiration is to apply for it? I know we want to get that money into Colorado in 24, 25, or 26. And getting that money into Colorado when the federal government has all of these grants available is one of the reasons for the bigger push on this right now. I guess I kind of had an aha moment about 2 months ago on this. So I think that's why there's a bigger push to get this going faster, is because of all of that big money that's already been appropriated by Congress in the IIJA. So obviously, as a conservative, I'd want them to take it back if we could, but since it's already been appropriated, we need to get it back to Colorado where I sent it to them. So that's the big aha moment I had. Thanks.
And Commissioner, you mentioned the Steamboat line. I think we're also in a little competition with them to get funding and to get really the time and energy from our legislature. So having Front Range be the big dog moving out quicker is important. Is that true, Andy?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. A few very quick points to the point around the local development for the stations. Our finance committee and the district holds very close and dear, and we've included in all of our conversations this idea of equity across the district. And we want to be sure that the local governments are included in this conversation moving forward. And somebody mentioned California. There's a lot of things that California has done wrong. One of the things that they did well is part of a ballot measure on one of the lines included a local share back to all the local communities around the district in order to help facilitate these kind of economic development and station development conversations. The district is looking at that, and that will be a part of the ballot measure conversation moving forward. Also, just very briefly in regards to the federal dollars, you are absolutely right, Commissioner Williams. There are federal dollars available. We know, for example, California, again, just to come back to California, they are going to be putting in a $6 billion request for these dollars. So the question is, will these federal dollars come to Colorado, or will they go to California and the other states that already have the passenger rail to develop? We are working very hard to try and maximize and leverage these federal dollars, as well as this opportunity that we have right now with the creation of the district, where we are in the planning, the leveraging the relationships we have with the FRA. On our board right now with CDOT, we have the former general counsel of USDOT representing CDOT in the state, and he has been instrumental in getting us, in line for some of these grants. So I think there are a lot of things that have lined up that are in favor for Front Range Passenger Rail, and I only mention that is because those won't be lined up moving into the future. Those funds will go away quickly, and that is, as everybody has mentioned, is one of the main reasons why we are really working quickly to get to the ballot in 24. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think we all get it.
Thank you, Mayor.
We just got to make it the best we can for each of our communities.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Okay, good to see you, Jill. Thank you. All righty, that takes us on to the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Survey results. Danelle.
Good morning again. So to help us out with our long-range transportation plan and specifically the public outreach portion, we've actually hired a consultant, Kearns & West, who has worked on several other planning efforts in the region related to transportation. And they've helped us put out, as part of this consultant agreement, develop and put a public survey to gather some information to help us just identify the public's interest and help put us in help give us some information to drive our long range transportation plan. And today, actually, I'd like to introduce you to Morgan from Kearns and West, who's going to give you a little bit of an overview on the results of that survey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the board. I'm Morgan Lomley with Kearns and West. We're the strategic communications firm helping out with the LRTP. We conducted this survey in the summer. It concluded in September, and it was broadcast to the entire PPACG region and received about 818 unique responses. So with the time I have, I'd like to give you some high-level takeaways and some key themes. It's not a statistically valid survey. It's meant to gather trends from the community on, do you think transportation conditions have improved? If you were to, hypothetically put some effort and energy towards improvements, what would those look like? And also tracking what some of the patterns are in the way people move around the region. So within the 818 unique responses, there was, I would say about 30% of individuals said that transportation conditions have worsened significantly. On the flip side, about 20 to 25% of individuals said they've improved a little bit. So people look at this from different perspectives. At the end of the day, it's about their schedule. It's about their freedom of movement within the region. And what we understood is, in the 5 years since this survey was conducted for the 2045 LRTP, people are walking more, they're biking more, and they're using transit more in significant numbers. And when asked if they would do that even more, all individuals across the board said that they would if safety, congestion, and other conditions improved. So the key concerns that people identified were congestion, road conditions, and safety. And we do see that tracked across surveys, I imagine, within this region and across the nation. But people are looking to those improvements to bike, walk, use transit more. But at the end of the day, I think it's about 90% of people do use their personal vehicle to move around the region. And they're looking for improvements in road conditions and in congestion in the region. So looking at this slide specifically, I want to point out a few things that we noticed. People's average commute is between, you can see here, 66% of the commutes are between 10 and 40 minutes. In our work at Kearns and West, we find that people generally underestimate their commute. So it's just important to note that people are traveling, but generally their commute is only 40 minutes. Transportation conditions, this is the one in the middle, the graph chart that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of across the board. And when you ask people, do you feel like it's gotten better or worse? I don't think there's a real trend there. Some people think it's gotten worse. People think it's gotten better. And then the 5 items I wanted to leave you with are, when we ask them what could improve, I mentioned people do just want to generally see improvements in road conditions, decreases in congestion, but some of the big concepts that they pointed out, and this was in the open-ended responses, were front range passenger rail. Just heard about that. People are on their own volition suggesting that as a solution. They would like to see intercity rail, expanded public transit. The numbers of individuals who take public transit rose about 3% from 5 to 8. And that's a significant number if you look across the region, 8%. Coordinated traffic signals. So that's pretty granular, but people are noticing that on a daily basis. They want coordinated and improved traffic signals to our points earlier, increase mobility, increase the flow of traffic. That really does impact a commute and your sense of ease with your commute. Improve land use planning. Now we're getting to kind of a higher level concept, but looking at connectivity between regions, between cities and counties, and more bicycle and pedestrian facilities so people feel safer when they're out with their families or commuting, whatever it is, by foot, by bike, rolling. So this slide is in your packet. These are the key takeaways. Kearns and West did write up a more detailed summary with more granular responses on the survey, and that's available. I'll take questions now if there are any questions for us.
All right, any question? Councilmember Donaldson.
if Commissioner Williams has a question, go first, please.
I was just wondering if the survey is on our website or how we get a hold of it to look at it.
The survey questions?
No, the actual detailed results in the survey.
Those, I'll let Danelle answer.
The detailed, the summary response is not on our website right now. However, we certainly can put it on our website and make it available. We did share it with all of the members of our TAC, so all of our jurisdictions have it, but we can email it out and make it public as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you. And these comments they're not directed at you. They're just directed at this survey. And unfortunately, the way we as a board get information. So this comes from across, which counties do this include? El Paso, Teller?
All of the counties within the planning area.
Okay. How many citizens, how many folks do we have in there?
I'm not the science. About
Million?
a million.
Million?
750,000.
Well, we got that in El Paso County alone.
Quick
Okay.
question for clarification. So it just it was within the MPO area probably is where the survey was focused?
It was focused on our MPO area. However, we didn't put any stipulations on making sure that somebody lived in the right zip code. We did ask them for zip codes. I can't recall how many zip codes there were. 48. There were
48.
people from 48 different zip codes who actually responded to the survey. And we did kind of map those out and see where folks were. We did have a pretty good dispersion within the MPO area, so we felt pretty good about that. But you are correct that it's not a statistically valid survey. Obviously, 800 responses within our population is a very small percentage.
And then like who responds to this kind of questionnaire? That's not even random. You're going to get activists, like people who have a dog in the fight or an interest in this topic responding. So if I went out and asked 1,000 random people in Colorado Springs, how can we improve transportation? Would one of them tell me Front Range Rail? I kind of doubt it. But on here, it's the number one answer. And so it's not you, it's just the survey. And it's just when we do these kind of things, we see it on city council too. We come up with planned COS and 2,000 people were interviewed. It's not an actual sampling of the citizens of Colorado Springs. It's 2,000 people who are connected in some way to these topics. And so we get a skewed sense on these boards, we get a skewed reality of what do the citizens think. So what were these? I would just caution my colleagues from putting too much weight into this. Maybe John can address this, or maybe one of you wants to. It's just the nature of the beast. You put these surveys out there, the people who answer them are bicycle people. Hell, I'm a bicycle person. I used to be. But it's not fair. It's not accurate to think that, hey, and that's what the citizens of Colorado Springs want. 90%, 95% aren't bicycle people. And so when we weight that heavily, it's like the weighting on the other thing we just talked about, public safety. You weight it heavily, it's a distortion. And that's when citizens get angry at their government, because now the government or these organizations are doing things they don't support. But to us sitting in here, well, hey, the survey says number one, Front Range passenger rail. It's just not reality. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
I agree. If your survey says, which candy do you like? And you only give choices of candy that they like, and they don't like candy, they don't have an option to answer that particular question on the survey. I think that's what you're kind of saying.
Well, I didn't
mean-
think I said anything about candy, but I get what
No,
you're
but
doing.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do want to point this out. I am not blaming the staff of PPACG or saying you're not doing great work. I just warn us to take it with a grain of salt, because it is, this is where the candy example will come in. It ain't a random sampling. If you talk to your neighbor, depending on who your neighbor is, you're not going to get this kind of information. And that's what I always try to do, is go back to what do the actual folks paying the taxes want? Not what does this elite slice want. You know, they want us all to ride bicycles. That's great. But for working people, it just doesn't fit into their life. They've got kids. They can't stick them on the back of a bicycle and ride everywhere. So I think, you know, as a board making decisions, we need to have a heavy dose of reality and keep that at the forefront of our minds. Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
So if were these phone surveys, and if they were, when someone said front range passenger rail, was there any qualifications beyond that? Because I'm kind of curious what I would be interested in seeing, and I know that the express lanes, the CTIO organization, I think, has probably this information. How many people are using that express lane going to Denver? Because when you say front range passenger rail, are people thinking, wow, I could live in Monument, or I could live off of Interquest Parkway, drive up to Monument Park and hop a ride to downtown Colorado Springs? I'm wondering what they think front range passenger rail is, because if all we do is have a station in Colorado Springs downtown to get us up to Denver, all that does is actually increase traffic on I-25 getting down to the station from where I live, which is northern Colorado Springs. So I'm wondering what they are thinking front range passenger rail means. I mean, does it mean I can live in downtown Colorado Springs and hop a train out to Peterson Air Force Base every day? Or does it mean I can live in Colorado Springs and hop a train and ride to Denver, or I can live in Monument and avoid all that traffic coming downtown and hop a train in Monument to come downtown? You know, I need to know what they thought front range passenger rail means.
Sure. Madam Chair, members of the board, Morgan, I'll ask you to hop here in a second, but it was all computer-based website a survey, and there were some open-ended questions. And that's where Morgan and Kearns and West is going through and sort of parsing out keywords of what would you like to see better? And if someone said front range passenger rail, right, that's where they sort of grab that. Is that correct? Or there wasn't any phone surveys, right?
No phone surveys. This was voluntary. People opted into taking this. It took them about 15 minutes, and that's a commitment of time too. So to the members' comment about people self-selecting and this representing really a snapshot in time of what those individuals, with the caveat that that's a specific group of individuals, want. There are some takeaways I think that we can circle on or circle around in terms of transportation conditions and how that could be a discussion point, not a data point, in identifying the scoring criteria and then the subsequential step of the project list. And so it's a snapshot in time of the self-selected group, helping us understand very generally, where do people, what are they thinking in terms of their schedule, moving their kids around, what it takes to get in a car and move somewhere within the region. To your question around passenger rail, the reason why we brought it to the top here is people were not asked in any question around passenger rail. They've heard it mentioned in the news. They think they know there's a train coming, so they don't know specifically, will it take me from my home to downtown? Will it take me from my home to Denver? But the thought of a train and rail is generally exciting. And I think that's the high level point we can take away. There's general excitement and public support for a train. No questions asked beyond that.
So, and if I could, I know we're a little behind schedule, so I'll be quick. I think Councilmember Donaldson, that's why we lead with this is not a statistically valid survey. So just so you know, it's one of those things we're required to go out to the public and get their input. And this is one of those efforts. There will also be open houses and a 30-day public comment period down the road. So this is just one of the many sort of tools in the toolbox. It is far from perfect. We do not pick any projects based on this. We don't say, oh, look, this was the #1 based on the survey. That was the scoring thing that we talked about earlier. That's what we used to pick projects. This is more of that sort of thing. And again, the value really is knowing that what is out there as far as what's going to move people to sort of weigh in. Because you're exactly right. If I'm sitting on a group or a neighborhood association or something, and I see this survey and there's something that's a hot topic out there, I'm going to send it out to all of my friends. So it is a self-selecting sort of thing, but it gives us sort of a heads up. And for those of you who were on the board last time that we brought the long range plan, right, one of the things that came up was transit through a prominent neighborhood. And we had the whole group of those folks show up at that last meeting, and it really sort of derailed our stuff. So we're just trying to get a sense of what self-selecting groups that are out there that are going to weigh in and how to sort of take that information and address it. But we're not going to select projects on it. We're not asking you to believe that this is a statistically valid survey, because it's not. The cost of doing a statistically valid survey would be more than our budget, quite frankly, for the whole transportation organization for the year. So we do what we can with the funding that we have. So my apologies if you thought that we were trying to somehow put this up there as this is what all the people want. This is the results of the survey, as imperfect as it was.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate that. And what you've addressed, what I was speaking about. The problem is this gets amplified. It'll be on TV, maybe not tonight, right, but it shows up on television, and then bam, then, oh yeah, okay, trains. And it is kind of the tail wagging the dog. So thanks for addressing my observations. Thanks.
Also, man, I would like to, now I want you to create a visual here. You imagine me riding from Callahan on a bicycle?
E-bike.
That would really hurt people's eyeballs.
Well, and we would expect for you to do that in bad weather as well.
Okay.
I mean,
right.
and that's the thing is, right, there's so many variables to these things, right? Where do you live? What's the weather like? Everything else. So again, we just try to sort of take this information, weight it as appropriate, and then move forward as best we can.
I say this in jest, but man, I was in Boulder County and around Boulder whenever they were pushing the bicycle pass and all that kind of stuff really strong. And like Councilman Donaldson was talking about, it was wagging the dog, and they brought in a lot of federal money and that kind of stuff, but it did cause more safety issues than it solved. So this is something I want to bring up.
And again, at our level, we're looking at that higher regional level, not the actual project implementation. So we're counting on folks like Gail Sertivant to sort of say, okay, now that we've actually got funding for things and we're actually going to put something in, to make sure that they engineer it in such a way that it's as safe as possible. So from our perspective, we don't get down into those weeds of, and maybe weed had something to do with that. No, sorry. You know, it's one of those things where we're looking at the overall system. We're looking at all the different requirements and eligibility. Again, there are certain fund sources that we have that can only be spent on bicycle or pedestrian types of projects, right? So it's how to take those funds and maximize them and optimize them so that we're actually building projects that don't just sit there and say, hey, look, feds, we built what you told us to do, that we can actually use our brains and use that funding and all of the different sort of political landscape that's out there and actually come up with a transportation system that actually tries to improve people getting around. And so that's why we look at that big level, but we count on folks like Gail and all of the jurisdictions to use their common sense and actually implement something that's actually going to get used and be safe.
As long as that's prioritized and as long as it's been regionally, okay, you first off started talking that this is a whole complete regional area, but yet, man, there's areas in that area that this could be beneficial with, but in most of our areas like Teller County, El Paso County, this is not really a very valuable.
Yeah, and that's why, again, this particular plan, again, is that metropolitan area. I know that's a point of contention for you that part of rural El Paso County is excluded, but this is that urbanized area by definition based on population density by square mile.
I'm just making sure we're alive out there.
We got you.
I have a couple of comments. Just one thing, you said it was not statistically,
Not statistically valid.
but at the top of it, it says what it is. It says in the summer of 23, and this is where, back to Dave's point of the news getting hold of this, PPACG surveyed the public to understand regional transportation preferences. So that right there, it says, initially says this is a valid report. And secondly, we did a not statistical, whatever, survey in Fountain a couple of years ago, and I actually went through a lot of the comments, and I figured out, just looking at comments and email addresses and different things, I spent way too many hours on this. Almost 50% of the respondents didn't even live within the city of Fountain, and it, like he says, it totally skews the survey. So I no offense to you guys, I know we have to do this, but I do kind of have, I mean, I'm glad we got 808. I mean, that's fantastic in my world, but I do have some concerns when we're not finding a way to, with the technology we have today, throw out some of those outlier people that are some of the 40-some zip codes that don't live anywhere near us. So we get a little bit more accurate survey of what the people within the region really are wanting.
I know you're incredibly busy, but it was not our intent to have wording that was misleading. And I'm happy if you have the time to help us with some edits, we'll change the wording so it's a little more descriptive. And, sometimes we sit in our little bubble, our little planner's bubble, and we're like, this is brilliant. And this tells us everything. And then that once it gets outside the bubble, you're like, well, what were you guys thinking? So sometimes we need those outside eyes. So we take that as good constructive criticism and would look for help to make it more reasonable and reflective of.
I'm going to volunteer Councilmember Donaldson to work with you.
Okay. And then as far as the outlier zip codes, do you know how many were outside the region? Do you have that?
I can't speak to that right now, but we can commit to looking at the zip codes and making sure they fit within the urban areas.
Right.
So it might be 800 next time you see it. But again, we saw that with the GHG rule, right? We had people from outside the country,
right?
Not let alone outside the state, weighing in on that. I'm like, well, that's not fair.
Well,
but
you go to testify at the Capitol on a very contentious bill, and they were letting people from other states testify before the people who actually lived in the state, and so it happens everywhere.
So we can exclude those. It again was not our intent to weight it or skew it in any way.
No, I think we need to carefully look at things. So thank you. Good conversation.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry, please go ahead and finish.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess I would like to, since I do represent PPACG on the Front Range Passenger Rail, I guess I'd like to muddy the waters a little more. There's like 17 directors on this group, and we're distributed from essentially Fort Collins down to La Junta, and each of us kind of comes with the the priorities of our own jurisdiction, and those are not always clear. If you go north of Denver, I think there's a history up there with RTD. Those communities are, I think, more organized than the rest of the constituent members for the Rail Commission. They're pretty organized. They make periodic trips back to Washington and so forth. So in a sense, there's kind of a competition here. We've got different priorities. I think something that would be useful going forward is for those of us in this region, El Paso County, basically, to figure out what we really want, because right now, the north of Denver is sort of doing a lot of direction on this, and there's a lot of different moving parts. So I think for us to come up with an idea of what we want is important. In a sense, I think we're ahead. We have a better idea of where we'd like to have a station. None of the locations have been identified, which as soon as you say that really puts northern Colorado into a tizzy. It's kind of interesting to watch the food fight. So I think that would help. With respect to this particular study, I think Councilman Donaldson's point is very good. It's not a huge sampling of the population, but it's kind of an early stage idea of what would people use. Would they actually use it? I know from my experience in Manitou with bus services, if the bus service is free and arrives every 10 minutes, people would use it. And people who voted for that would not use it, but they still think it's a good idea. And you look at it and you say, geez, there's no way we can make that kind of service cost effective. It's just a dream. So it's kind of it gravitates more towards the unicorns and rainbows situation. And the reality is, would people actually use it? Does it solve a problem? So that's really what's in front of us. And while I think a study like this provides some information, it's really beginning. I wouldn't put a whole lot of money behind it. So that's the nature of the problem. I think I probably muddied the water sufficiently to.
Let's just make sure when we're doing surveys, there is an option on there for people to say, I wouldn't use it ever, or I don't like this idea. If their only choice is always candy, and you don't have a choice of, I don't eat candy, I don't like candy, whatever, then we're not really doing a true survey.
Yeah, no, my one of my sayings that I often use, and my staff has heard it more than one time, if you're given a choice between a knife to the heart, a gun to the head, or a kick to the groin, everybody wants a kick to the groin, but in reality they don't, right? So you have to have that something more than the least objectionable alternative part of the study. So we agree.
Councilman Donaldson?
I have to say that I thought I had maybe taken us on a long conversation without really an end, but after hearing that from John Leosatos, it was all worth it. It was always. I'm going to say I'm going to use that.
Touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I was just going to let it go by. Okay. All right. It's 11:02, everybody. We still got a couple more things to go. Is there any last minute questions on this? Because I think we're all passionate about it. We all got great input on it. So, all righty. So now we have newly reelected Mayor Graham there. Just feel free to email him with all your comments and concerns, right? All right. Blow up his box. All right. Thank you very much, Morgan. All right. We're on to item C, freight study update. John.
So yes, I just want to remind everybody that Netflix charges $19.99 a month. And for the absolutely low price of free, you can get all the excitement of a Netflix special here at PPACG by staying for the freight workshop that is directly after this meeting. So if you're interested in freight or anything, we would encourage you to stay, or if you're online, continue to have us tuned in there. The workshop will have a study update of the a Freight 101 that kind of gives everybody an overview of freight. It will do the Freight in Our Region presentation, which is again the findings from some of the open houses and workshops that our study has been doing. And then Kimberly Bailey's here already. Oh, and Gary Barber, and they will talk about the Southern Colorado Rail Park overview, or what is known as SCRAP. So back to the freight study itself, just want to remind everybody you saw an update of it last month, and that we will be bringing it to you hopefully for adoption in December. So again, we're just trying to keep this on schedule, mostly because this is one of those projects that we had to fund through CDOT, and when the CDOT does the contract, they have a sort of an end date. So if we can get it done in January, if you're all good and you can adopt in January, that'll be good. Otherwise, I think we have to go through a contract extension and all that other process. So I think that's where we're at on the freight study. Any questions?
And for those who may not be able to stay for the meeting, is it going to be recorded so they can watch? Okay, thumbs up from Jared. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
It'll be recorded. Yep.
Okay. Did you have something?
I'm going to nominate
okay.
Jason for an Emmy from like Netflix gets.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Seeing none, let's go down to other reports and minutes. And we have CDOT.
All right, good morning. Shane Ferguson with CDOT. So a couple of quick brief updates. Yesterday we did a celebration to honor our veterans that work at CDOT. We have quite a few that work with us. And so in light of just the coming Veterans Day holiday that's coming up, we did a quick ceremony just to recognize them in their service. And so just wanted to share that real quickly. And then with respect to the coming weather tonight, we're not really expecting too much impact with our travel up and down the I-25 corridor. I think the most impact will be at the Palmer Divide. Our crews will be out and about this evening and afternoon just to address that along the corridor. But outside of that, we're not expecting too much of an impact from today's weather event. With that, I will turn it over to our veteran, John Hall, to give the project updates.
I think this is on, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So the slide again this month has a few things I'll just note on the active projects. Obviously, MAMSIP and Fillmore to Garden of the Gods. Safety and operational improvements is kicking off here. So it's going to get a relatively slow start. Most of the work being on the west side of the road, but it's going to slowly ramp up to a point where barrier goes down, pinching the southbound lanes, and we'll get really constructing that first third of the project, if you will, to get the first section of the southbound bridge built and stuff like that. So really exciting. The two projects I have crossed out on this, I wanted to accentuate, they're not 100% done. There's still some work, but they're basically closing up shop, right? Some final striping and stuff up there on US 24 by Woodland Park, and then the ramp metering project as well. It's just going through some testing and stuff like that. Near-term projects. So again, I briefed, I think last time, the ADA project should be kicking off. That's got ramps all throughout Colorado Springs, through Fountain, the area around our offices near the World Trade Center there, around Lake and I-25. We have sections in Monument and other locations on 24, Mountain Luther King Parkway area, and then up in Monument as well. So the traffic project, pedestrian improvements, 8th and 31st Street is also kicking off. A lot of work on that. We should be beginning in the next month here, along with region-wide sign replacement and pavement marking projects as well. On the near-term advertisement, so Baptist Road in Terrazzo is actually out, and that current plan is for bid openings next Thursday. And the next two projects I have highlighted there, 67D north of Woodland Park and Powers Airport interchange. Those are the two 10-year capital plan projects that we're hoping to advertise, over the late fall and winter here. The first one to go out the door should be 67D north of Woodland Park. We're hoping to advertise that on November 30th. And then Powers and Airport, probably in the January, February range is when we'll hopefully get that advertised once we get some final agreements with the city done for permanent water quality, and along with final clearances with Peterson Air Force Base. And then I will just note that the traffic project for the signals at Woodland Park, in the Woodland Park area there, that did not successfully let, so they will be re-advertising that. Traffic tells me that they're going to try to push re-advertisement as soon as they can. And then I-25 resurfacing midway, that's going to be the first, and basically the one resurfacing project that Fillmore to Garden of the Gods really is a resurfacing project as part of the scope as well. But I-25, that's down there by the county line with Pueblo, that should also advertise next week. Leave it up to any questions or anything like that.
Okay. Well, it got really interesting in my end of the town with the train issue. Yeah. That was an interesting couple of days with with all the work on Highway 115 and I-25, and then
I'll just say that we are expecting probably another closure on I-25. My guess will be probably first part of December. We're going to try to limit that to nighttime only, and we're still going to have to utilize that US 15 115 detour route. The challenge is people just don't see detour routes, right? And so they continue on and try to force the situation. But for BNSF to set the bridge, it'll require a few closures coming up. Again, 24-hour, both directions of I-25. Yeah. And so we'll definitely get the notice out well in advance, try to get enough communication out with the trucking industry, et cetera, just to address those issues.
Well, I just heard a lot of compliments on when CDOT had access to it. Hats off to how fast they got it done and got it reopened and things that they brought everything in. So thank you very much. I'll reserve the rest of my comments, Mayor Gardine. I did it again, huh? Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You didn't go all the way down the list here, bud. How about the US 24G resurfacing east of Falcon to Easton Peyton?
Well, so the 115 and the US 24G, as you all might be aware of, there's slight inflationary pressures on the, on our overall funding. Those two resurface treatment projects are basically on hold. We need to see what goes on with the first ones, the I-25 Midway. We've got some other projects, another one out in US 50 and two projects in Pueblo area on I-25. We need to see the results of those. So I think that there's, in all likelihood, the 115 and the 24G will probably need to get bumped to 2025.
Yeah,
At this point.
we had to prioritize just where the funding went on our, just within the whole region, not to try to neglect any corridors. One of the biggest pushes is along the I-25 corridor. Our payment condition by federal highways on a number of these sections is considered poor from their standards and their markings. And in order to not be impacted by any federal funding, et cetera, we needed to address those right away. So we had to prioritize 3 corridors along the I-25 corridor, 3 pieces of the corridor first, get those projects out to advertisement. And when he says on hold, I'll say, depends on how the bids come in. If we can get enough money, we're going to go to advertisement with these 2 projects. But if we have to shift funds around to accommodate meeting the I-25 corridor, then these projects may slip.
I keep seeing this project getting bumped farther and farther down the list.
Yeah.
I'm not motivated with that. Okay, and I like them in Seaman, I mean, okay, I-25 and all these people, I like to see them drive between Falcon and Peyton and see exactly how they'd be motivated about it.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay?
Yeah, I can assure you, I mean, Shane and I have put in requests to get access even to FY26 funding, you know, well ahead of when we're normally allowed to get access. So we're trying to set the circumstances so that we can get these projects out the door as early as possible, but it just depends on bid results.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands online. Okay, in the MAMSIT project going north between exit 128 and 135. Okay. When you get to the exit 132 exit, it moves around. They both 132 and 135 move around a lot. And we all get that during construction, but 132 you get, and there'll be a sign that says exit coming up. And then right before you get to the next exit sign, in front of it, there's a sign that says where you can pull over in 250 feet. It's blocking the exit sign. I have missed the exit numerous times. I know other people have called me up. I'm going to be late to our meeting because I missed the exit. I have to go all the way up to 135 and turn around. If there's any way they could kind of look at that, maybe put the 250 feet or make it 200 feet, put it on the other side of the exit sign so it's not directly right there. You miss it. And then 135, I cannot believe we haven't had more accidents because it is like you're going 60 miles an hour and you have to slam your brakes on and get off. So if there's a way we could kind of look at that, it happened to me again this morning, a couple of cars in front of me, the guy just slammed on his brakes to get off on the 135 exit because it's just very straight. And so maybe just a couple of safety issues if we could. I know y'all are doing the best you can, but
it's definitely concerns that we're aware of. I'll assign one. I'll pass on immediately to
okay,
to our project engineer to
Yeah.
make sure to that we're not blocking view.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I don't know if you have any update, but that northbound direction, we may be opening it. Can you maybe give a little bit of update that section?
Yeah, I mean, there was an intention of getting it done here before Thanksgiving, but I think that's now kicked into December at this point. I think to get it fully, but they're working as hard as they.
I know. I see them out there even on weekends. You see people out there, and I really appreciate it. But just a couple of, but that one sign thing just seems it seems odd.
Needs to be something we should certainly address. The specific area that they need to finish is those Ramgore areas.
Right.
Though. So that's exactly what they're focused on completing right now, and also why you have those very tight.
Well, it makes it difficult because especially at 132, you have to exit at such a high rate of speed so you don't get rear-ended. You're missing the sign, and then immediately it drops to 30 miles an hour for wherever the cones are today.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not seeing people slow down when they're getting off. I'm surprised we haven't had more accidents when they're getting off into that area to the actual, Mesa Ridge Parkway. So, yeah. But anyways.
Even I can basically commiserate with you. I mean,
I know.
Even well aware of the project. I am. Oh yeah. Okay. A little alignment change. Oh, alignment change today.
Especially with the time change. It's very dark, very, very dark. And if they've just moved the cones out that morning, with double cone lanes, you're trying to, making a decision at 40 miles an hour, which cones am I supposed to follow today?
Yeah, the signage I'll definitely, and we're gonna work,
Yeah.
we're working to open up those ramps and
know.
just get
I
the
know you are.
northbound direction as quick as we can. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Summary. We're all sitting here taking pictures of it, so thank you. All right, that takes us on to Holly with Stack.
So I complimented Shane, and now he's probably getting pestered by every other metropolitan organization in the state, saying that he has totally taken away my stack report with his slide. So we appreciate that very much. The one thing I did want to update the HB. Last year, 1001, or this year, the TPR boundary study. The STAC committee voted to keep the TPR boundaries the same. That is probably not what the governor wanted, or the people who live in, I don't know what the intention of the bill was by one legislator was to try and get more money into up to the ski resort areas on I-70. So going away from the intentions of what the purpose of that bill was, the entire study in and of itself was very well done. Lots of comments, lots of notes to it. The Transportation Committee will meet. Is it this week or next week? They meet next week, and then they start their own study. They will have a recommendation from the Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee, which was unanimous to not change the transportation planning region boundaries. And that's about 17 members. The majority are rural, but it was completely unanimous. And then, but that doesn't mean the Transportation Committee can't open it up and do what they want. So we'll just see where it goes and see how things end up in January or February when they make their final decision. And I know that our new Transportation Commissioner came on board with actually no instructions as to how to vote on that. She told us that. So we'll see, where they all land. They're just a new committee. They're just, really struggling to learn all of the ins and outs of transportation. It's a lot of information for them. And then to be thrown this decision right in there is going to be rather fun for them. So thank you very much.
Okay, and I don't know if since we're on transportation, I don't know if Hannah was able to stay on the line this long, if she had anything. I see an H, but I'm not sure if that's her. Hannah Parsons? There she is. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I was unable, I couldn't unmute. So I appreciate it. I'm here. And thank you, Holly, also for your generosity in mentioning that we are working through a lot and learning and do have this vote coming up, but we're looking forward to the presentation from the CDOT staff. But it's been a big full month. We've been getting a lot up to speed on some of the Front Range passenger rail, and that was a great presentation from Andy and Jill and team. And then also have had a couple meetings on the fiber committee. So I'm on the fiber committee and have some updates coming from that as well that we're going to have in workshop next week at the CDOT meeting. So there's a lot going on, but I think it's all good stuff. I'm definitely open if anybody has questions or things that they need me to attend or questions for me to answer in the upcoming meetings, but everything is going well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Hannah. Alrighty, and that takes us, I just always want to mention item 8J, if you can look through your municipalities or counties and see if you have any openings on any of the boards and committees and commissions we have. And those are super important to get those filled. And Andy, that takes us on to the executive director's report.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two things I'll mention real briefly. One, you may have seen an announcement already, but we did get a federal Safe Streets for All grant award announcement last week, and I think it was for about $220,000. Does that sound right? But really want to thank the city of Woodland Park that helped us. They were the applicant on behalf of the region. We couldn't apply directly, so Woodland Park applied for everybody except for the city of Colorado Springs. They applied and got their own grant. So we're all going to be planning for safety improvements and other initiatives over the coming years. So really pretty excited about that. Second thing I'll mention, I think Jared sent out a note about this. We may be setting up a legislative committee meeting for early December. I think we were trying to hone in on Monday, December 4th, but we'll send a follow-up as well. But just wanted to follow up from the roundtable we had a couple of weeks ago and prep for the session that's going to get started. Hard to believe here in about a month and a half. So more to come on that. But that's all I've got pending any questions.
All right, well, nail that down soon because don't tell anybody. I actually have time on Monday, December 4th, but don't tell anybody.
We
Okay?
will nail that down today,
right.
maybe, if our two co-chairs are free as well.
Yeah, we have a co-chair over there. He's looking. Maybe. Okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. Any member entity announcements? I'd like to thank Colorado Springs for the great Veterans Day Parade last Saturday, honoring our veterans. That was good. So thank you very much. It's a good community regional building event. So thank you. All right. Alrighty. All right. Unless anybody has anything, we're adjourned and we'll start the workshop at 11:30.